Alright, hello everyone. I'm saying this for the benefit of the online people who are joining us for the final activities. We have already done the multiple choice test. I would suggest that you guys go ahead and trade answer sheets like the instructions say. That's true too. Yep, up there. So go ahead and trade papers, go through and mark them off for the other person. For the online people, we already went through and we had the questions. They're all in the slides if you guys want to check it out, and they'll be on the handout that will be in the description box for this video if you're looking for that. So here's just the final answers, and then once we get the answers and we figure out where we're strong, where we're weak, then we'll go over and cover those areas again just to discuss them and see what's going on. But I slated this part off as 54 minutes, 6 minutes per 3-question slides, and we beat the timer. So, and I figured that we probably would. 2 minutes per multiple choice question is usually pretty good timing. So we'll go ahead and we'll let them get that done, and then we'll go ahead and discuss any issues that we had. Yep. All right, so.
Okay, so what was the right answers?
Oh, I didn't have the right answer. That's all right.
I'll let you get that in there. All right, so for the first column, which was basically all questions from lesson 1, is there any of those that we wanted to go over? 1, 2, or 3? Nope. Okay, so we were good on lesson 1, at least here in class. 4, 5, and 6 was lesson 2, week 2, whatever you want to call it. Did we have any questions there that we wanted to go over?
Okay, I got 6 wrong.
6 wrong? All right, let's go back to 6.
And 4, 5, and 6 were from what lesson?
They were from lesson 2, week 2. Yep. And you said you got 6 wrong?
Yeah.
Okay, so. All right, so on 6, we were doing syllabification. First thing that we always do is we look for our vowel sounds. So we have the alpha is a vowel sound. Omicron, upsilon together is a vowel sound. That's a diphthong. And then omega is a vowel sound. All right, and then in Koine Greek, vowels automatically gets what is in front of them. That's a default for consonants. Now the first alpha, it doesn't have anything in front of it, so yeah, that's nice. The real question is it going to pick up what comes afterwards? And there are a set of rules that say whether or not you pick up that consonant that comes afterwards. One of them was if the consonant is the final letter of the word. Well, the K there, the kappa, that's not the final letter of the word, so it's not going to pick it up because of that. Another one was if there's another consonant that comes after that one, well, there's no other consonant after the kappa, so that's not going to be it. And then the final way that it could pick it up is if that was a double consonant, like C or C, and it's not one of those. So is the alpha going to pick up the kappa?
No.
No.
By itself.
No, it is by itself. So we can automatically get rid of A and B. So it's not going to be one of those. And then we go to our next vowel sound, the U for the Omicron upsilon, and we know it automatically gets what's in front. It gets the kappa. The question is, does it get the consonant that comes afterwards? But there is no consonant that comes afterwards. So we'll just divide the vowel sounds, and we're done.
So that was D. I messed up on it. Yeah.
It happens. All right, so that was 6. So we had a bit of an issue there. All right, on 7, 8, and 9, did we have any of those that we wanted to review?
Apparently I missed number 8.
Okay. I missed 9.
Okay, 8 and 9?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back.
And lesson what for these?
This would be lesson 3. Yeah. Each column is a different set of lessons.
Falls. Fill in the pit.
All right, 7, 8, and 9. Let's go back to that. All right, number 8. Which common translation does not belong? This basically depended on you knowing the different kinds of translations that can be problems. There's 2 major classes, transliterations and also traditionals. This set of words that was given here was a mixture of the 2 different kinds. Some of them were transliterations, some of them were traditionals. However, there was more of one kind than the other. You had to find the odd man out. So when you look through these, most of them, which one were they? Were most of them transliterations or were most of them traditionals?
Most of them were transliterations.
Most of them were transliterations. Prophet, apostle, baptism, those are all transliterations. So the odd man out is church, which is a traditional.
And now I see the word in my notes right there. Traditional. There it is.
And I saw the list. That's what we
Well, I'm looking at
It's from 2 different lists. It got to be different, yeah.
Oh.
Okay, so that was what was going on with that one. And then number 9, I admit it was kind of a tricky problem. A Greek word has roots which mean to live and joyful. What does the Greek word mean? This was a trick question. The roots don't tell you anything about what the word means. Okay, Koine Greek was a language that was basically thrust on a group of people. They didn't care where the words came from. They just learned how to use it because they were taken over by the Greeks, and you better learn how to speak the language of the people that are over or in charge of you. So they didn't really care about where the words came from. They just used them in practice. The roots didn't really mean a whole lot. So for Koine Greek, you can't really use the roots to tell you a whole lot. Sometimes they follow from the roots, sometimes they don't. It's not a guaranteed thing. It's kind of like the whole thing with the English word pineapple. It doesn't grow on pine trees. It's not really an apple, but yet we call it a pineapple. Those are what the roots mean, but it has nothing to do with the thing itself.
And I found that area, but I just...
Well, I did too. And I left it blank, and at the very end I went back and kind of looked at my page, but I see that.
All right, in the next column, 10, 11, 12, did we have any that we wanted to go over? 10? All right, anything else from that column? Nope, okay.
And I think, I knew I actually got this one wrong because I did.
All right, cases. Cases for me are fun.
Where are the cases?
First lesson.
Oh, 4.
Yeah, this is lesson 4. Yeah, so what is the case of A in the following sentence? Marty, a spaceship has been crashed in your backyard by NASA. Was it the nominative, the genitive, the dative, the accusative, or the vocative? Now there's a couple of these that right off the bat we can get rid of. We know it's not going to be them. Anyone take a guess at one of them that I would immediately mark off as not being a possibility for this?
I don't know what I got wrong.
What would you say is definitely not going to be one of the cases? Vocative. Vocative is the one that's used for direct address. Unless the guy's name is A, it's definitely not going to be that one.
That's right.
Okay, so definitely not going to be vocative. There's another one that we have also a pretty good chance of it not being that one either. Any guesses on what the other one that would probably not be either is?
Accusative?
No, I would say not the genitive. The genitive, especially in English, is used for showing possession. The word a doesn't really show possession, and it's not connected directly with something that is showing possession. It's not connected with a your or a my or something like that. So it's probably not going to do that. So genitive is pretty much off the table. So that leaves us with the nominative, the dative, and the accusative. All right, now I gave you a hint on this one. I'm not sure how helpful of a hint it was, but I gave you a hint on this one. I said, what kind of verb is being used, and what did you guys come up with?
Passive.
It is a passive. Absolutely correct.
The action is done to them.
Yeah, it's not the thing that's doing the action. It's The action is being done to it. And when you have a passive, the definitions of these three basically kind of wind up switching around. The nominative is usually the thing that's doing the action. But when it's a passive verb, instead it's the thing that's receiving the action. So the action is crashing. So what is it that received that action?
Backyard.
Okay, we'll just directly ask the question. What is it that has been crashed?
Spaceship.
The spaceship. The spaceship did not crash itself. Who crashed the spaceship?
Marty.
No.
We don't know who. Oh, NASA.
NASA crashed it.
Oh, NASA.
Okay,
Sorry.
so it's not doing the action itself.
So,
It's being acted on. So the spaceship is the thing that's nominative, and that A goes with the spaceship. So it would be the nominative.
I thought I had it down there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how it's
I know, and I have all these lines and arrows and I just
And then because nominative and accusative switch, the thing that's actually doing the action, the thing that's doing the crashing becomes the accusative, so that would be NASA. And then what received all of this in the end is going to be the dative, so that's the backyard.
So let me. This is accusative. And spaceship is nominative.
And we didn't have any problems with 11 or 12, right?
No.
We're okay on that? Okay, perfect then.
I guess right.
Woohoo! My guesses were good. I actually liked 11 a lot. I thought 11 was a good question.
Yes, I like it.
Yes, that was a good one. And it was actually
Masculine, plural.
All right, and let's get back to it. Okay, on problems 13, 14, and 15. We had a problem with 14. And any others?
We're on 13, 14, 15.
Yep.
I didn't actually make any wrong on that one.
Okay, so let's go back and hit 14 then. 14. Which of the Koine personal pronouns does have gender?
So I have it written down, does not have gender, and that's what I answered. First is no gender, just a mistake of my little
Your brain goes.
Yeah. The first two do not have gender, the third one does. All right, problems 16, 17, and 18. Are there any of those that we wanted to discuss?
I apparently missed number 17.
Number 17. Any others? No? Okay. Let's go back to 17. It says, what is the resultant meaning of the phrase en mai? And there was that in the section. I can't remember exactly what page it was on.
It says,
That it actually gives you the phrase en mai.
I just said the individual words.
Yeah.
Yes, it's the second page of book 6, under 2 particles.
And then what letter?
Oh, right there. Oh my gosh.
F. Okay.
Blew my mind.
It's usually the way it goes. Yeah, so yeah, there actually, it is in there, and you said it was on the second page of lesson 6, section 2, and then item F, you said, right?
Item E, sorry.
Oh, item E.
Sorry.
Okay, item E. Yeah, it actually is in there, and it says specifically that, whoops, I put down the wrong one. The if not becomes unless.
And I was parsing it out, not parsing it
You got
out.
each word separately, which, yeah.
And then there was the if and the not, and I knew that we had discussed that it was unless, even though it says if not in there, I knew that it was that. And you did help me find it, but I was going in the right direction finally.
Woohoo! All right, so we got 17 there. What about in problems 19, 20, and 21? Do we have any issues there? We were perfect on that lesson. What was that one? Was that lesson 7?
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so lesson 1 and lesson 7, we are fantastic. So far, lesson 3 looks like it was kind of a weak spot for us. I'll need to revisit that next time. All right, 22, 23, 24. Did we have any in there?
I got you.
24. Any others? Nope. All right, let's go back and hit 24. It said, which mood would best be best used to express a wish? Which of these can we automatically cut out as being the wrong one? Which of these would you never use to express a wish? We'll ask that first.
Let's see.
I think there was imperative was one for sure.
No, I'm saying which one would you never use for a wish? We'll get rid of that one automatically.
I think it was the imperative.
No, imperatives can be used to express wishes. Yeah, the indicative is the mood that's used for basic facts. That's not really a wish. So yeah, the indicative is not going to be a good one. The other 3, though, actually all can be used for wishes. However, the one that is the best suited for it, the one that most directly applies to wishes, is the optative.
You know what I did? That was really stupid of me. I read the first one. It's like, no. The other one says uncertain but probable. That's a wish, and I marked it down. I need to look at the other 2.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. Yeah.
And then I looked at it. Oh,
Yeah, that's why I said best. Maybe I needed to underline the best in there. Put it in great big bold highlight or something. I don't know. But yeah, the optative is the one that's the best. Now, in Koine Greek, the subjunctive was taking over for the optative, so it's possible you can get wishes that are in the subjunctive. And imperatives can be used for wishes as well. They're strong wishes with a known positive answer, but it can be used for wishes as well.
I want this.
Do this. You're making a request, but you're making a very forceful request. Yeah.
This will happen.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's the case on that one. And then 25, 26, and 27, did we have any there? So, that means I made that way too easy. I need to start asking more questions about infinitives.
We got them right.
Exactly.
It's just by the skin of our teeth, you know.
Well, I admit that on that one I didn't really cover a whole lot. We rushed right through that one. And we're done. Pretty much. Alright, so overall we had 2 sections that we did completely perfect on. One that we had some fairly major weaknesses, and then a few scattered throughout. Not too bad. What I would suggest for this, that you'd be looking for with this class, with this kind of thing that we're going on, you'd want to at least get 21 right out of the 27. If you got that, you're probably doing average for people that would be in this, that or above would be okay. Because yeah, in a course like this, odds of getting a perfect 27 out of 27 is not very high. It's just not the way it works. If you have a real life to live, it's hard to keep track of all this stuff. And my students, for the longest time when I was teaching math, had the hardest time with my stuff, because I always graded on basically maximal performance, and then said, you know, the average person is not going to get that. You're going to be down here somewhere. And there were always those OCD students that always wanted to be at the maximum end of everything. It's like, you don't have time for that, honey. Just don't worry about that. Yeah. You have other classes too, I hope. But yeah. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and get into the translation activities. In this section, it is heavily suggested that you work collaboratively. Okay, this is supposed to be a group activity. The other one I said, keep it apart for the most part, unless you have something you can ask someone on, but keep it apart for the most part. This one, I encourage you to work together on it and discuss things. Okay, it is supposed to be collaborative. Now, as far as how your translation is going to be judged, how it will be graded, that's what the next part of these instructions cover. By the way, I'm going to do an example for you guys, so you can see this in action. But first rule is, in your translation, every word that's in Greek must have a corresponding word or phrase in English. So if there's a word over there in Greek, I want to see it translated in some way, shape, or form in the English side. Now, there is one exception to that I will allow, and that is articular infinitives. By the way, there aren't going to be any in yours. Okay, but if there was, I would allow you to bypass the article on articular infinitives. There's just really no good way to translate those, so I'm not going to bother with that, but pretty much everything else you can directly take over.
So none of that'll be in.
You're not going to have to worry about that. Make sure that every word you have on the Greek side gets represented on the English side. So if you have 3 words in Greek, that means you're going to have at least 3 words in English, if not more. And then also indicate which words were added. Sometimes to make it make sense in English, you have to add words in. That's okay. Try to minimize that as much as possible. You don't want to be adding in a complete extra paragraph for no particularly good reason. Don't do that. Okay, so minimize the number of added words, and if you do put in an added word, indicate that you added it. Italicize it, put it in brackets, do something to let me know this was added. Okay, on the screen here I use italics because that works really well when you have, you know, a word processor. You guys probably want to use brackets. It's a little easier when you're actually writing it out. Okay, and if the words come from the parsing codes, like genitives are usually of or from. They have to put in front of it, right? Don't put that in italics. That's not an added word. That's part of the parsing code. That's part of the word.
Okay.
We might have to have multiple words in English to get that Greek word, but it's part of that Greek word. That Greek word is genitive. It's going to have that. Yeah, no, Mr. Telemarketer, I don't want to talk to you right now. I have other things to do. Okay, so if it comes from the parsing code, don't bother putting that in the brackets or whatever. It's only if it's truly an added word. All right, and then avoid using words or terms that someone unfamiliar with the Bible would be confused by. Basically what I'm saying here is no transliterations, no traditionals. You put those in, you are wrong. So anything that would fall in that category, God, Lord, apostle, prophet, church, any of those words, don't use them. That one will take a little bit more time. Because those words we use every day, it's kind of become our Christian lingo, our Christianese, if you will. We know exactly what we mean by them, most of the time. But they don't necessarily translate very well to someone who's not familiar with them. Like my Muslim friends, for example. They say, you believe in God the Son, right? Yes, I do believe in God the Son. God doesn't have a wife. Don't you know that? That's not what that word means.
Oh, yeah, God is.
Yeah, when we talk about God the Son, we don't think of God having a wife, but Muslims do. It's a very confusing term. So you actually have to translate what God the Son actually means rather than how we usually take it across. What does it mean that the second person of the Trinity is the Son? Does it mean that there's a biological relationship? No, you'll have to find some other way to communicate it. All right, and then your goal is to provide a technical rather than practical translation. Meaning, yes, it's going to be choppy, it's going to sound weird, that's fine, but try to make it as precise in capturing the Greek as you can. Yes, it would be nice if it was at least basically grammatically correct in English, but you're trying to capture the Greek. I'm not worried about stylistics here. I don't care if it's good English style. Make sure that it captures the Greek. Right? That's all fine and wonderful.
That's all fine and wonderful.
Let's actually do an example.
How are we supposed to do this collaboratively?
You're going to discuss it.
Well, I know, but...
We get there first.
Okay. It's not my point. Yeah.
All right, so here is the example, problems 28 through 30. This is John 1:1 in Greek. And you'll notice that on the screen there, or in your guys' on the page, I didn't give you any parsing information whatsoever. Which means that when you guys do this, you're going to actually have to look it up in your interlinears to find the parsing information. And I've given you the reference. I've told you it's John 1:1. So if it was me, what I would do is I would, of course, look it up in the interlinear, figure out where all the words match, and I would take a translation that I already know, that's already fairly precise, and I would modify that. I probably wouldn't start from scratch, at least from where you guys are, because that was going to take too freaking long. So I would start with the basic translation that I already have. You guys already have access to the NIV and the NESB. The NESB is typically a little bit more literal. It's going to be a little bit more word for word. It's going to work better for that. So start with that. And then the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that NASB translation and I'm going to see if every Greek word matches onto something that's in the NASB. So in the NASB we have what? In the beginning was the word, right? Usually. Yeah. All right, and so I'm going to go through here and I'm going to make sure that each one of these Greek words matches that first little phrase in the NASB.
Okay, should we start Matthew or God?
You can, if you want to follow along. So I would ask, okay, does the in map onto something? Well, in the translation, it starts out with in the beginning. So that in maps to something, so it's good. And then the arche. Does the arche map onto something? Arche means beginning. Beginning is already in the NASB.
Yes.
It's okay. And then the ain is a verb. I can look at the parsing code and at least know that it's a verb. I'm not necessarily going to take the time to look up the whole code on it, but I can at least look in the interlinear part of it, and I can get a pretty good idea of what that verb is supposed to mean. It'll probably, in the interlinear, say that it was. So in the beginning was the word. Yeah, that's represented in the translation. That's good. And then ha is the article, the word, so the is there, and then logos is word. I would go through and I would do that with each one of those lines, make sure that every Greek word has something to represent it in English. That would be my first task. And then after I've done that, I'm going to do it in reverse. I'm going to look at all of the English words and see if I can map them back onto the Greek. And in that first phrase, in the beginning was the word, I have an extra English word. The phrase, in the beginning, the has been added in. There is no the between in and beginning in Greek. So I need to put that in brackets. Those are the first two things that you have to do in your translation. And all that I've done so far is basically just take the NASB's translation and checked to see it backwards and forwards. Does the Greek map onto the English? Does the English map onto the Greek? If it has extra words in there, put it in brackets. I'm already halfway through the translation task. That'll suffice for what would usually be considered a passing grade on translation. Everything from here is gravy. So after I go forwards and backwards matching the Greek onto English and then the English back onto the Greek, the next thing that I'm going to worry about is words that are not going to adequately communicate to someone who doesn't understand Christian culture. I'm going to have to take a look at Christianese. So doing that first part there, the in the beginning, in the beginning was the word. Is there any words that are there that could be potentially confusing for someone who doesn't understand Christianese, who doesn't understand Christian culture?
I don't think so.
I was saying word.
What's the word, man?
Huh?
Exactly.
You see, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Got it.
You know, we know what the word is, but they're like, word? What word? What do you mean word? Yeah.
So we're going to have to translate it some other way, because people do have a very secular use for that word, dude.
Yeah.
Things like that. You're going to want to translate it in a way that does not have a distinct secular meaning of its own. So instead of word, I would probably use something like expression. It still communicates basically the same thing. It still means the same thing, but it doesn't have a distinct secular use. People don't walk up to each other in the street and say, expression, man. Not going to happen.
Right.
They don't do that. And yeah, it's different, it's weird, but it will get them thinking, and it won't have a distinct secular connotation. So I would take care of that. So that logos, when it's translated as word, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take care of that. All right, so that's the third check mark. So I've already checked all the Greek words, made sure they mapped into English. I've taken a look at all the English words, made sure they mapped into the Greek, and if I had extra English words, I put them in brackets. Then I looked at the problem words and said, does this have kind of a special own secular meaning of its own? Is this kind of special Christianese? Yeah, this could be a problem, so I'm going to take care of that. I've already done that. What is the last item on the checklist? Subtleties. Subtleties are definitely the bonus gravy. Is there anything that we would see in, and this you might not have time for, and so if you don't get to this, don't freak out about it. But if you have the time, go through and look through the parsing codes and see how they match up. Okay, so the ain, for example, I might look at it and say it doesn't have the right tense. It's being translated as a past tense. In the beginning was the word, in the beginning was the expression. I'd look at the tense, see does it match up? Could I actually verify from that it is supposed to be past tense? I'd look at things like that. Another thing that I would look at is how it meshes with everything else that's in there. And I would say, you know, is there a way that I can make this a little bit clearer based on everything else that's there? That's what I would do. Okay, but like I said, those kinds of things are the gravy on top. If you can get at least 3 out of the 4 check marks done, you'll probably at least get a passing score. Okay.
So how did you say to do the aim?
Ain
Is was, right?
Ain is the was, and I would just check and make sure that it matches up. I know it's being translated as a past tense. Does the parsing code actually say that it's supposed to be past tense? That would be a good thing to check.
Okay.
Sometimes it doesn't always match up, and it's good to know where that is. All right, so if I were to go ahead and do a full translation, I'll have it here on the screen for you guys. And I did the full meal deal on it. I would not expect that you guys would get it all, but if we did the full meal deal on it, it would be the expression was there in the beginning, and the expression was there toward the great one, and the expression was there great. Every single Greek word I've mapped onto something that's in English. So I color-coded all of the Greek words, mapped them onto something that's in English. Every single Greek word is represented. Then there were some words that I had to add in to make it make more sense, to fill things out. And those words that I added in, I put in italics. You guys would probably put them in brackets, but I put them in on italics. So words like there and the, there, one. I did all of that to make, so I've got the first 2 things, I have the 5 words, and then did you remember to bracket the added words? That's just 1 point, one way or the other. Did you remember to do it or not? So the first one was 5 words, second one was 7 words, third one was 5 words again. That's where this first number is coming from, is how many words do you have in each line? The added, did you remember to italicize added words? That's either a yes or a no, 0 or a 1. And then go through and look at the Christianese. Are there things that could be a problem, or do they already have kind of special secular meanings that you don't want them to get confused with? The word, there's already a secular meaning for word now that does not mean anything remotely Christian, so that was a problem. And then also, there is a little bit of a problem with the word God nowadays, because the secular conception of God is not very accurate. And so sometimes you have to take a look at that and get them to think of it a little bit differently. So I usually do the adjective great, and then that allows me to actually pay attention to something that's going on in the Greek. One time that the word for God is used, it has a DRP on it, which means it's actually undergoing DRP elevation. This is in the area of subtleties. You're not always going to notice this, but it is a subtlety that has that DRP in front of it, so it is technically elevated, so it would be the great one. If I translate it as God, it's hard to actually show the audience that there's DRP elevation here. And then the second time, it doesn't have a DRP on it, so it's actually functioning as an adjective. In most translations, you will not get that for the second part. For the third part. And a lot of times for common translations, they'll say, and the word was God, right? It's not saying, the Greek though is not actually saying that the word was who God is. Instead, it's saying the word is what God is. It's functioning as an adjective there. It's not functioning as a personal reference. And that's why I chose to do this. That's a subtlety. Most people are not going to notice it. That's fine if you don't get it. But if you want some added points, look for those kinds of things. We know where we're not shooting. Okay. On this one, I would want you guys to at least get 23 out of the possible 30 translation points. I've put the translation points at the end here. That's what I would hope for. Now, that being said, where do you think most translations will actually lie on this one? How many points do you think they would get? The average English translation that's out there.
For this particular passage.
For this particular verse.
I don't know how to answer that.
They usually only come about to the halfway point, about 15, sometimes 18. So a lot of them are not going to differentiate between the 2 uses of God. letting you know that one time it's talking about the who, the other time it's letting you talking about the what. Most of them are not going to bring that out. Also, the subtlety of the there in there. There's actually a positional phrase in the Greek. It's talking about the position that the second person of the Trinity was in, not just the time. And that's why I put the there's in there, because it's actually positional. Most translations are not going to bring that out either. A lot of them are going to go over those kinds of things just because they want to keep things short and simple. Your guys' job is to see the things that aren't short and simple, at least as best you can. Are you going to do it perfectly? No. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of points that are available on your task, but no, you're not going to get them all, and that's just fine. Okay, I'm not expecting you to get the full thing. On this one, I would be just happy with 23 or at least something close to that out of the 30.
Okay, so there is a word that you added.
It is a word that I would added because in the context of John 1, it's talking about a change in the position of the second person of the Trinity, not just a change that happened through time. So there is a time difference, what the second person of the Trinity was versus what he came to be in the Gospel of John, but there's also a positional difference. He was there, now he's here. All right, so with all of that said, you guys have the task of translating Matthew 6:9 through 13.
Right.
Go ahead and get started on that. And I will check back with you guys as time ends. We were supposed to have 30 minutes on this. That's probably not going to happen. But go ahead and get started on what you can. And we'll go from there. And just go line by line. If you don't happen to get to the end of the Lord's Prayer by the time that I want to stop and check on things, that's fine. Just try to do the best on each line that you can. And once you're finished messing around with whatever that line is, then go forward and talk to each other about it. Collaboration.
We're going to collaborate on each line, is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I need to look up like all the parsing and all that kind of stuff.
That would be the last thing that you would look at. First, get a translation down. Check the forwards and the backwards on the Greek. And then make sure that you don't have any confusing terms, any Christianese. And then look at all the subtleties. Subtleties are last.
So do we go and we look up the parsing code and then look it up in the back? Is that what you're wanting us to do?
No.
No. Okay. Word. Is there a corresponding Greek to English word?
Yeah. Take a translation to work with. NASB is usually pretty good. And start checking it. I suggest that you use scratch paper first before you come up with the final translation.
Okay. You have to spell things out, really.
Italicized words. Okay, in this, the italicized words are the Greek ones. Because there's some that are italicized, and then there's some that are in regular print.
Italicized ones are usually ones that have been added into English.
Oh, okay. Okay. Just this
Well, your first task is the pater hemon.
right.
Just those two words. Figure out what those two words translate into.
Is it just pray them then? Is it
No.
pray them?
No. That first one is Father.
Okay, let me find where I'm at.
I will tell you right now that if that translation stays with Father, you will miss lots on it.
Yeah, we'll probably have some people too.
That's okay to write down for the moment.
For the moment, yeah.
Okay.
And then go through and figure out things as you go through.
So just these first two words is all you want us to do right now.
For the first one. Work on everything you can with that. Then if you get done with that, then move on.
Added that word out. Even italics means they added that word to it, now it says it's father. And you look that word up, and you see what you're here, it's this word. It be. Says the father of us.
So I think we want to say father. Yeah.
Do father. So we can read it right now.
So how do we know to, because I mean it says father, and if we look it up back here, it'll probably say father, maybe give us other suggestions.
There's that. I also gave you some other lexicons up here that you can consult. And then the one that will probably help you the most with the transliterations and whatnot is going to be the one that I gave you in here.
Oh, okay.
Back at the beginning.
Right here. This.
Then the one that you're looking at is
Okay.
now, of course, the instructed form is going to be a little bit different. So normally what you do is you look it up in the back to figure out what the form is, and then look at the form here. So this, yeah, this. And then that would
This is the right one?
be, yeah. Then
Okay, so let me tell you what. So it could be father, but you don't want.
something that's potentially confusing.
Yes.
So here, you look at 4252, it's up here. So here you look at up here,
Up here.
and then we give you some
One of
suggestions.
these, okay. So, because father, if somebody else would be thinking of an earthly father, we would probably, because we know it's talking not about an earthly father, so should we say sovereign? Would that
would be
be,
better.
okay.
So you look the number up here, then you do the base form,
Okay.
and then you look
Find
it up
the
in
base
here.
form here and then go from there. Okay. Okay, so our sovereign, that would be, or we could say a sovereign of ours.
Be sovereign of us, if you want to do it that
Okay,
way.
sovereign of us.
Yeah, it's either our sovereign or sovereign of us.
totally not how I would think the sovereign of us, but you know.
Yeah. And that would be the Greek order. That would be just fine for what we're doing here.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so now we need to, see what else to it. You said we needed to go backwards? Okay, we've got everything is represented.
Okay, so where's the checklist? Okay. So, first thing is every Greek word represented by some word in English.
Yes, we got that.
You got that good. And then this out every English word derived from some Greek word. And if you had something that was added, did your English put italics or brackets? No.
Bracketed.
No.
I'm not bracketing.
No. That one
It's
is
the
added.
sovereign.
Is it?
No. It's not added.
Oh, that's right, because of the,
That's,
Yeah, it's part of the case being demonstrated.
that's right.
Cases we don't worry about.
Okay.
Yeah, if it comes from the parsing code, that's where you're getting your extra words from, that's just fine. If it doesn't come from a parsing code, that's the ones you have to add.
Okay.
That's the one you have to grab.
It's so hard to remember everything.
there's a lot to remember.
Yes. You're talking about old people here.
True. Only the good ones.
So the sovereign of us, is it, we've done that
Okay, the
one?
sovereign
We
of
didn't have
us.
to add anything?
Okay,
We didn't set off the
Are
sovereign?
there any words in English that we needed to figure out? We did.
We did
We
that,
got that
and
one.
father to sovereign.
Okay, have we checked for subtleties that are clearly present? I don't think it's applicable to that
I
one.
mean,
It
not
doesn't
for that
seem
one.
to
That
be.
one's so
Okay.
short that there's not really a whole lot that you can
Okay.
see there, especially time-wise, not that would be greatly beneficial.
Okay, so we can write this down,
We need
sovereign
to
of
write the
us.
word that, or just sovereign of us?
Just sovereign of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I translated the Lord's Prayer not much to words, which is actually very impressive considering that when you started this class, there's no way you could have even done one word, so
Yeah,
that.
Okay, so now we're doing the next one, right?
Yes, and then you'll do the next line there.
Sovereign of us.
Instead of 2 words, now you got 4 words.
Okay, so it's
That
giving
first one
us.
is the- And it's in italics, that means they added it. Is that what you
Is
said?
it?
It's in italics in here, it's got no brackets on it.
But it's still represented by ha.
The big question is whether or not it comes from the Greek. Now, they might not represent it in English. That's what their italics means. It means they're not going to translate it,
Oh, okay.
but it's still in the Greek.
It is.
Your guys' task in your translation is to make everything that's in the Greek into English. So they might not use the, but you should because it's in the Greek.
Okay.
They're being stylistic.
Okay, so do we need to look at these all up with the codes, or just use the ones that they have there, and then decide to look it up if we need more help?
Decide to look it up if you need more help.
Okay.
A lot of these are ordered to be kind of basically familiar with.
Okay, so this twice,
Yep.
they're saying it's the. Okay, but they aren't putting it there. They're not translating it as the. They're just saying that's what it is in.
Yeah, they're not going to translate it across because they think it's too clunky to be stylistically appropriate.
Okay.
But your job is to find a way to translate it. Your job right now is to represent the Greek in English. It's not going to be great English. Try to represent as much as you can. Yeah, you have 2 thes in there, which probably means that one of them is not going to be a regular the.
Twice. Then okay. The in the heaven. Okay, that's the next line, right?
The in the heaven. Okay, so for basic information, that works.
Okay.
Okay, so now we have everything that's in Greek represented in English.
Okay.
Definitely does not sound great right now.
No. Okay.
So we're going to have to figure out especially something to do with that first
Okay, so I'm gonna guess that. So we're gonna need to figure out another word for the.
another way of translating that DRP. And you guys actually have a chart, so different ways you can translate the
These are
DRP.
my DRP charts.
What is A or M?
Where's my clear chart though? Big four. Is this right here? Is that
Yep.
the one you're talking about? Okay.
And we're
So
saying that the for the first one doesn't really seem to make a whole lot of sense.
No, it doesn't.
So we're going to have to find some other combination that will make more sense.
Okay.
It has to follow from what we just translated. So we have sovereign of us. What comes after that?
Who in the heaven? Which in the heaven? Would be which be together?
Are we talking about a person or a thing?
We're talking about a person, so it should be who, right? Okay.
So who is it? Should we add an is? Who is it now? Who is in the heaven?
So is can be added because it makes it flow a little better.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The verb of being.
Yeah, it's part of that DRP. DRPs can have verbs of being in them.
Oh, there we go.
It's right there. Yeah, it's right in there as part of what the DRP is. So we have who, we is.
Who is? There we go. There we go. Okay, so the is added. So we want.
No, the is added. It's part of the DRP.
I keep getting.
Oh, I was gonna.
That's right.
Add it too.
That's right. Okay.
It's part of the DRP.
Okay.
DRPs can have implicit verbs that just can't be a verb by themselves.
You know that's gonna be an issue all the way through this. I'll get it.
Well, that's the reason why I'm
here. Okay, so
So we have a representation for Aaron.
who is in the heaven? So we've got every Greek word represented. Does every Greek word derive from the Greek, from some Greek word? Basically, yes. Are there any words in your English translation that are Christianese? We know what heaven is, right?
The question is someone who's not a Christian going to understand what heaven is?
You know,
Up in the sky somewhere. That's the
but
song.
not specifically heaven. They would like, pie in the sky heaven, but they wouldn't know heaven specific. So we should probably.
What does a Christian mean when they say, when they're addressing God who is in heaven? That's the thing that you need to find some way to. Well, do we mean God who lives up there?
Huh?
I'm just falling off of what she was saying. And then at the same time, I would suggest that you look at the parsing code on heaven there, because it turns out that there's something going on there that's not being translated, but it's in the parsing codes.
So do I still need to look up the word, or do?
I would suggest you look at the parsing code first on this one, actually.
Okay.
It's in
Personally.
It's dated.
Plural?
Did you translate it as a plural?
No, so heavens.
There
So
you go.
That's
Heavens.
in there.
Okay, heavens. So we need to translate heavens then.
Heavens, you need to translate a plural.
Okay, so we need to make sure it's plural. So let's look at the part,
So I saw plural.
yeah,
It goes in the letters.
41.
So you need to find some translation of heaven that's going to be meaningful to someone who's not a Christian, but makes sense of it in heavens. What is the author trying to communicate by saying God is in the heavens, not just in heaven?
Visible heavens, in the air.
Will that be on this one?
It could be. In fact, it probably is, I think.
Is in order.
Yeah, they're in alphabetical order.
Okay, right there. That which is beyond, transcendent. Ooh, okay. So we want.
The Lord's Prayer says that God is in the heavens. What does it mean?
That which is beyond.
How would you make that plural?
I don't know. Those which are beyond.
That would be plural, I'll give you that.
That's how you ask me.
True.
Well, or would you say skies? Are we
talking about God being in the sky?
No.
Is that where God lives?
No, I didn't.
Has a
think so.
little cloud home set up there.
Yeah, why not?
Which is beyond us.
Okay,
Which is
that-
above.
That
We
those
need to get the idea of
that,
above.
that which are beyond,
So God isn't on earth?
that which is, well, okay, but how do you make transcendent? Then you have to like, how do you make transcendent plural?
That would be a really good question.
Because you can't use transcendent.
Yeah, this is one that isn't super easy to capture the subtlety on, but there is plenty of subtlety there to be had. And we did actually discuss this at one point in our lessons.
Yeah, like,
Whether or not we remember, that's a whole different story.
Oh man. So what lesson was that in?
I'm not going to bog you down with it because
Okay.
we didn't, unless you took really good notes on it, you're not going to learn out of it.
Okay.
So do what you can on that to capture as much as you can, and then
Okay.
move on from there.
in the heavens. Okay, so now let's do.
Forgot about it. I just think most people understand that God lives up there somewhere. I do.
It's kind of a problem with Mormons. They think that God lives up there too on a planet called Polar.
Well, you know. I'm sorry
How-
for Mormons.
Okay. Those which are in the heavens. Okay, who is in the heavens? In the great
Great.
beyond.
I was just gonna say that. The great
Land before
beyond.
time, it comes back in reclass.
Some of us was in
Well, okay, let's take out the and say okay.
the great beyond.
No,
Because that's like the future tense.
yeah,
Beyond us.
yeah.
And then capturing the pearl.
In the great beyonds? I mean, not in the great beyonds. In that, no, that
No,
would
that would be plural.
Yeah.
And it would have the in there, so you're still keeping all of the words.
Visible heavens, above the visible heavens. The sovereign who is who is beyond the visible heavens.
There's a lot of added words there.
Those which are beyond?
We're not quite getting at the main concept of it, but that's okay.
Okay. Well,
Do the best you can.
okay. In
We're going to call it the great beyond or the great
I'm gonna say
visible
in
heavens, above the visible heavens.
those
There is no above and you can fill.
which are beyond. Okay. Who is in those which are beyond?
Those what which are beyond?
I'm making that plural.
Those which are beyond. He who is in those which are beyond.
All right, we're running out of time, so I'm going to go ahead and put an end on it. Yeah, I was definitely thinking optimistically on this one, but
Yeah.
the good news is you guys at least have things that you can work on your own time if you want to. But let's go ahead and talk about what we have so far here. We've already done 31 and 32. So 31, I probably would have done exactly like you guys did, and I kind of helped you with it, but I would have done sovereign of us. 32, on the other hand,
That's sovereign of us.
yeah, 31, I think we would have been pretty much exactly the same.
Oh, see, I was just trying to use all the words that you had there, not like other words.
Well, 32 is a tough one,
Yeah.
and a lot of translations do not capture it. It's actually a statement of God's omnipresence. When it takes the heavens plural there, it's not talking about God being in some beyond place. It's saying that He is through all the different places. So that one's really hard to translate. This is one way that it could be translated, but the emphasis there is that He's everywhere, and that's why I included the word all. It's the God who is everywhere is basically what the Lord's Prayer says, but not in so many words.
Right. Okay, so we added all.
Yeah, I added all. That's why it's in italics there. And I have expanses, but there's lots of different ways you could do that. But the big idea is that God is in all of them. That's the reason why the plural is there, is because God is omnipresent. Not everyone's going to notice that, though. Don't beat yourself up if you didn't get that.
Boy, I'll say. That was.
All right, and then just for the people online, I'll go ahead and leave 33, 34, 35 on there so that you can check it once you do those. Then I'll give you 36, 37, and 38 on the screen. You can pause it, come back to it when you're ready to do it. 39, 40, 41. Again, go back and pause it to see how you did. And when everything is said and done on this, there's a possibility of up to 74 points. I would not bet that most people out of hand would get that. I think that most people would be lucky to get 56. In fact, I don't think that even most translations will get all of that, because most translations try to make things relatively simple.
So we can keep working on these and then hand them in to you?
Well, it's not like the State Board of Education really cares about this.
I understand that, but just to see how we can.
If you want to, yeah, you can give them to me when you're done with them, and I can mark them up and show you little things here and there or whatnot and give them back to you. That's not a problem.
Okay, so do this as like homework, is that what you're saying?
You can. I mean, you can just get it back to me
Whenever.
next Sunday or Sunday after, or whatever the case happens to be. Because, yeah, I know it takes time, especially if you're not used to
It
it.
does, because I mean, just those 2 lines right there took us how long?
And that's fine. It's fine. Like I said, I got optimistic, but it does.
In a college class, that might have just been peachy.
Yeah, I'm optimistic. But anyways, thank you guys for participating. Thank you online people for participating. That is the official end of the Logos course. For the people who are in the physical class, if they want to get back with me once they've done the rest of the translation, that's just fine. For you people online, if you try to mail me your stuff, do not expect any return answers. I'm just saying.